Government has spent billions of rand to buy land for restitution purposes, with thousands of hectares already distributed to black people. What are the practical interventions required to support land reform beneficiaries to ensure that land is used in a profitable way? Well, let's discuss this now with Peter Sito. He's the Chief Executive for the Vumelana Advisory Fund. This is a non-profit organization that helps beneficiaries of the land reform program to develop their land in an effective and sustainable way. Mr. Sito, good afternoon. Thank you very much for your time. Welcome to today here on eNCA. The interventions around the country's land reform program, when you hear about them now and again when they're reported, is that it's not moving fast enough, or there are a number of different types of challenges. From the people that you are assisting as an NPO, what are you picking up as being the biggest challenges to South Africa's land reform program?
Well, thank you, Braden, and thanks for having me, and good afternoon to your viewers. There's a myriad of challenges that really impact on land reform, as it were, as a program, but amongst which really is lack of post-settlement support, i.e. we have a situation where land is actually being given to people under circumstances where they are not provided with the requisite skills, they don't have access to markets, they don't even have access to finance to actually work the land. That in itself creates a challenge for beneficiaries of land reform. So in a sense, there is a need to balance the manner in which land is acquired and how is actually used. We are usually fixated with giving people the land without really looking at what is it that people do with this land once it's given to them. So for me, that's really one of the key challenges that we are facing as a country.
Yeah.
We also need to really look at the available resources that are there to support land reform in general. I think we can do that as a country. You know, I'm conscious of the fact that there's a huge debate on the government fiscus. However, there's a need to really collaborate with the private sector, you know, to tap into their expertise as well as the other available opportunities that they have available to them so that we can support land reform.
What is likely to be the impact of a failed land reform program? What are the consequences if we don't get it right? If some of those things you are mentioning now don't get addressed?
Well, perhaps in responding to that, it is important to reflect on what has really been the positives of South Africa's land reform. You know, it has contributed to a greater degree of political stability, if you like, as it gave ordinary people, ordinary South Africans, hope that their plight is being addressed, you know, or that at least at some point their plight will be addressed. So if we have a failing land reform, it can actually do much to harm, peace and tranquility that we have as a country. You know, it is important for social cohesion because we know that once people lose hope, that they resort to all manner of they resort to a whole lot of other things. You know, so it is important that we must get land reform to work so that we can address much needed skills shortage. We can ensure that people, particularly in the rural areas, can get jobs. We can ensure that our people can get to use their land productively.
Yeah, these are the challenges. Another one I just want to get your sense on. I've heard this, and I interviewed the former Minister of Agriculture some years ago here on eNCA about it, that there have been cases where the government has done its part, handed the land back to its rightful owners in a particular plot of land, and then later on find that nothing, no activity at all is happening, or find that the land has been sold, so to speak.
I think that talks to the point that I raised earlier on, to say it is really pointless to give people the land under circumstances where you do not similarly provide them with post-settlement support. And here we're referring to the means through which they can make the land productive. So which is partly the reason why we've seen a lot of failures or a lot of land reform projects actually failing, precisely because there hasn't been that level of post-settlement support that is required. And based on our observation and given our 10 years of existence, it's now established that partnering with the private sector is the most expedient way through which you can address the current challenges that we have with land reform, because government doesn't always have all the money to really finance some of these projects.
Yeah, and you'd want to attract investors. Is there appetite?
Well, the reality is there's a whole lot of responsible entrepreneurs and investors out there. I mean, I can give you, based on our experience, the project that we've been running for more than 10 years as an organization, we've had more than 23 or 25, to be precise, projects that we have concluded, which really mobilized in excess of R1 billion, and this is pure private sector initiative, and this really translating into using more than 70,000 hectares, putting more than 70,000 hectares of land to productive use, and really impacting on thousands and thousands of beneficiary households. So there is appetite out there. What is required is to get government to really support private sector initiatives. I think what we are seeing currently is that there is always this disjointed sort of efforts between the private sector and government, as it were. Sometimes you get a sense that there's some element of mistrust here and there. I think there is a need to get a way through which government, the private sector, and organizations such as ours can work jointly in a collaborative manner to ensure that we can address that.
Yeah. How can post-settlement support be made practical today? Just give you a few practical examples. I mean, what do you think it should look like and going forward? Because we cannot afford to fail with the land reform program.
Well, at a practical level here, what you need to do before you actually even give people the land, you need to say, what is it that this land has been used for? To do assessments on whether the community has got the requisite skills and resources to be able to really run the projects that have been running in this restored land. And one of the things that we need to do is to make sure that you support these communities through giving them some bit of, seed finance, so that they are able to run these projects. They are able to make sure that they continue to run the farms, they continue to employ the people. Because one of the things that we've noticed is that a lot of people have actually lost jobs as and when some of these land parcels were actually transferred. So that's one thing that we need to do. Two, you need the requisite skills. And for the most part, you find that our people don't always have the requisite skills. And the most expedient way of actually addressing that is to make sure that you can partner or get people who already have got the technical know-how to work with them, to mentor them, to enroll them so that they can run their farms productively. Thirdly, it's an issue around access to markets. Traditionally, because of the history where we come from, we not only lost the land, we also lost a lot of things, including access to markets. You need to support beneficiaries of land reform so that they can have access to markets, so that they've got somewhere where they can actually take their produce.
Yeah, my final question to you, Mr. Sito, before I let you go, is the gender issue. There was a campaign, I interviewed a lady once from Limpopo about one woman, 1 hectare, 1 woman. And we know that in South Africa, most of the land is controlled by traditional authority, traditional leaders, chiefs and princes and princesses and kingdoms, and like in Ngonyama Trust in KwaZulu-Natal. The role of women in this, I mean, we know that many of the households in South Africa are female-headed. In rural areas, many of those villages have got more women than they have men. What is your view? And I mean, not your view, what is your finding or your experience, rather? That's a better word. What is your experience in this engagement as a non-profit organization about how are women taken care of in terms of land reform program? Are they seen as active participants? Are they allowed and enabled as well?
Well, our experience has largely been with communal property associations as well as land trusts. The reality is, years back when the CPAs were actually formed, predominantly we found that it was mostly men who were at the forefront, who were taking the lead, you know. And I think as a country, we are progressing, albeit at a slow pace, but recently we've seen more and more communal property associations as well as landowning trusts, particularly those that we have been working with, really getting a lot of women into leadership positions. So yes, there has been some movement, but I think we can improve on this, and it is important for everyone, the private sector, ourselves, and government, to really incentivize some of these institutions so that we can get more and more women participation in leadership positions.
Thank you very much. That's Peter Sitou. He's the Chief Executive for the Vumelana Advisory Fund, a non-profit organization that's involved with the land reform program in South Africa, giving some of his experiences and insights, what they are finding out, and calling for more practical actions and for post-settlement support, and also the development of skills and funding is very important in addressing the whole issue to make sure that there is progress in the land reform program. And he also says that there needs to be more done to involve more and more women in leadership positions when it comes to the land reform program in the country.